Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of Our Home Ground. I am so happy that you're back. Also, a little surprised that you're back after the first episode. No, I'm just kidding. It just feels weird that people would be like listening to me in their free time. It's been so fun. All of my friends and everyone has been so supportive. So, shout out to all of you. It's fun and I feel a little weird about it, and that's okay. It's so good. On today's episode of the podcast, it is an all about me episode. So buckle in because I share a weird anecdote from middle school and high school that I somehow thought was relevant at the time of recording this podcast. And so, whatever, it gives a lot of insight into my personality and things that you might be able to expect from me. I feel like moving forward through this podcast. So it's a short and sweet one today. It's like 20-ish minutes of me talking, just kind of like about me, how I got into soccer, how the podcast came to be, and those kinds of things. Few quick fire questions at the end, which I will be asking future guests. I have recorded an episode with a guest and I'm so excited about it. That will be coming out next week. So, this is the last week for now that you have to listen to only my voice. Get excited. My really good friend Allison is going to be on next week's episode. So, this is so exciting. It was so fun to record with her. And shout out Allison for being the first guest and riding the wave of trying to figure out what it's like to host someone on a podcast. Anyways, more on that next week. I'm just really, really excited about it. So, for now, enjoy this and enjoy me rambling a little bit. There are some growing pains here, trying to figure out what's relevant, what's not, how to stay on topic, and all of those things. But I've been talking to a lot of friends about future podcast episodes, and I am so excited. I think there's going to be some really cool stuff coming. So tell your friends that I'm here on YouTube, Spotify. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok as well. But for now, enjoy the episode. Hi, I'm Brigitte, and welcome to Our Home Ground. This is a space where women's soccer feels personal and powerful, and we get to discuss the impact of the women's game off the pitch. So, for today's episode, I was thinking about some of the questions I might ask some of my friends who have so graciously agreed to come on to this podcast. And I was thinking about questions about, like, what brought you into women's soccer and how'd you get here and all these kinds of things. And then I was thinking maybe I need to take a step back and like answer those questions. So, this is like a intro number 2 kind of video, I guess, because this is just sort of like a getting to know me, Bridget, the host of this podcast, which just feels so bizarre to say. But I am so excited about this project. I'm so excited about getting to talk to other people who are just as excited about the women's game as I am and have knowledge in all of these kinds of areas. I have posted some really short snippets so far on social media, and people have been so supportive and so like gracious about it. And so I'm just really, really excited. Okay, a little bit about me and sort of like how I got into soccer. So, women's soccer first came on my radar. This is actually so funny that I'm going to start with this story because my family will be a little bit embarrassed. But soccer first came on my radar in like 6th grade, which is like such an oddly specific time. But I grew up playing tennis, and I think sort of like objectively, I was a pretty good tennis player. I ended up playing Division 1 tennis for a year and a half. That's a story for another day, but grew up as a very competitive tennis player and by like objective standards was pretty good at it. Anyways, that feels weird to say. But 6th grade, Bridget, I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12. I was young for my grade, so my age is always off compared to what people think it's supposed to be. Aside. Anyway, so I brought home a permission slip. I remember this so vividly. I was in 6th grade and I brought home a permission slip because all of my friends were going to play soccer. And I was like, Mom, can I join the soccer team at school? I went to a really small school. There were like 30 kids in my entire grade. And so, like, only half of those were girls, whatever. And I was like, Mom, like, I really want to play soccer. Can I play soccer? And at the time, I was already relatively far. This sounds so weird to say. I was a kid, but the way that tennis works, I was already playing tennis like super competitively. I was traveling multiple weekends a month to play tennis tournaments. So my mom was like, first of all, you play tennis. And my family is very supportive of me like trying other sports, but like she's like 6th grade is too late. Like all of your friends know how to play soccer. You're gonna be terrible. And so you won't play and it won't be fun. And like also you're gonna have to miss half the games because you have tennis tournaments anyways. So like no. And I still like bring that up. This is giving so much insight, I think, into the kind of person that I am. Anyways, I still bring that up. Like somewhat regularly to my mom. I'm like, yeah, but you wouldn't let me play soccer in sixth grade. And it's just funny. All of that to say, so sure, it was like a blip on my radar. I didn't play soccer. And then when I got into high school, all of my friends played soccer. Some of my best friends in high school were soccer players. All of my like male friends were on the soccer team. And so I became a huge fan of the game then. You can ask anybody that I went to high school with that I was like at every single boys and girls high school soccer game. They were my friends. I was there supporting them. And I just love the sport of soccer. I think I also have this fixation about a team sport since I grew up playing tennis, which is a very, very individual sport. Anyways, by the time I got to my senior year of high school, grade 12, if you're not from the US, I decided to be the like equipment manager literally on a whim. One of my friends was like, "Oh my gosh, we don't have anybody to be the equipment manager because the other people who were graduated." And I was like, "I'll do it." Like all of my friends were on the team, so I was like, "That'll be fun. I get to just hang out with my friends all the time and be on the bench during the games, all that." And they were like, "Wait, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And so I texted my parents and I was like, "Hey guys, can I be the equipment manager for soccer?" And they were like, "What? Sure, like I guess." And that was literally the extent of the conversation. Then my friends were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we have our yearbook photos this afternoon, so why don't you just come by?" I'm telling way too many details about this story. Anyways, I ended up being the equipment manager. It was like a wild thing. And so I got a little bit of information about how to keep stats. I kept the book and all of those things. So that's how I started getting into soccer. But then I went to college and it fell off my radar again. Even at the time, I was really only watching my friends' soccer games. I wasn't paying attention to this broader women's professional soccer or men's professional soccer. It was really just like, this is what my friends do. The sport's cool. Like, let's go hang out at the soccer game kind of thing. And so it really wasn't until later on in my life. I graduated high school in 2015, and I think the summer of 2015, I was aware of soccer because of the Women's World Cup, and Abby Wambach was like everywhere, and Alex Morgan was everywhere, Megan Rapinoe, like you couldn't get away from them. There were ads for them. I remember watching one of the games, couldn't tell you which one, when I was babysitting. I was like, guys, let's watch this game. But it was a very random choice. I was not committed to it at all. Didn't really know anybody except the stars. But if you're aware, US women's national team won the World Cup in 2015. So that was like kind of on my radar. And then I don't know. Abby Wambach was kind of always in the air. I just thought she was so cool. So I was loosely following what she was doing. But then after the 2015 World Cup, she like retired. And so, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really get back into women's soccer until Angel City FC came into the picture. Again, Abby Wambach, she is a common theme here. I just thought that the idea of Angel City FC was so cool. If you're unaware what it is, it's a women's professional team in the National Women's Soccer League, the NWSL, the American Professional League, that had their first season in 2022, I think. Yeah, 2022. And it was a female founded and predominantly female owned women's soccer team. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. I think there were like 14 former US women's national team members who were investors in the team. Natalie Portman is one of the founders, Julie Ehrman. Like it's just, it was a really, really cool concept. And the way that women were the primary founders, they essentially just not crowdsourced because it wasn't like random people, but like America Ferrera, Sophia Bush, and then multiple US women's national team members, including Abby Wambach and her wife, Glennon Doyle, were like founding investors of this club. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so I didn't have an NWSL team at the time, but I was like, I want to get into it. And this is the team that I'm going to support. I very loosely followed the team that season, would turn on games every now and again. And then the 2023 Women's World Cup was happening in Australia and New Zealand, and I've been hooked ever since. It's such an interesting time as a US women's national team fan to come into following women's soccer because if the 2023 Women's World Cup did not go super well for the US women's national team. They lost to Sweden in the round of 16, officially by like a millimeter, but we all know that they really lost by a mile. The US women's national team really didn't show up to that tournament, but I had already committed to like that. I thought the US women's national team was going to win the whole thing. So I'd committed this like month and a half to be up in the middle of the night because of the time change, watching games at 3 a.m. I was having so much fun doing it. And then the US women's national team lost. And then I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? Because I want to keep watching. So I picked new teams. And of course, I picked Australia because the home team is really fun to cheer for. And they have Sam Kerr, who was the only person that I knew at the time or knew of at the time because she was dating Christy Mewis and she played for the US Women's National Team. And then I also just by watching fell in love with the England Lionesses. Tobin Heath and Kristen Press had Leah Williamson on their podcast. She was out with the ACL situation. And I just was like, this is a team that I think I can get behind. And I was right. They're fun to watch. They were having a great tournament, have continued having great tournaments. So, yeah. And then I picked a WSL team. And I guess I'll just tell you now my WSL team is Arsenal. I mean, I mentioned Leah Williamson and that I like the Lionesses and Australia. I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to get to there. Yeah, Arsenal is my like diehard team. So there are my biases. I have put them all out there. I think at this point, U.S. Women's National Team, Lionesses, Matildas still, although they seem to be struggling a bit at the moment. Arsenal is my like number one love. And then Angel City FC is my NWSL team that I support. Although, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, I struggle to follow the NWSL and I can't quite put my finger on why. So maybe we'll investigate that a little bit. But yeah, so that's kind of like how I got into women's soccer. I just love it. Yeah, next thing I want to talk about is like why the women's game means so much to me and why I feel so passionately about it. To be clear, men's soccer, fine, great. I love it for them that they play. I don't know a lick about it. And so that can be like a really jarring thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like a big Arsenal fan. And then someone will try to talk to me about the men's team. And I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant. And that's okay. I like love that for them. But I am very, very passionate about women's soccer. And I am trying to be able to verbalize why and what it is about women's soccer. And it's something that me and my best friend Laura come back to all the time. We actually got matching tattoos about it while we were in Switzerland. And it's this idea of it feeling like coming home. And the people that I meet feel like coming home when I'm talking to them about women's soccer. It's this bigger sense of like belonging and community, which one of the major themes of this podcast that we'll just continue to investigate in so many ways. And so it's just, it has, I don't know, women's soccer, I feel like has given me this sort of place where I can be myself. I was going to say find myself, but I don't think that's true. I know who I am. And I feel like I can just be that person in the women's soccer community, both on the sort of local grassroots level. I play in 3 different soccer teams, 2 women's and non-binary teams, and a co-ed team. And I just, even in those spaces, and then in this broader fandom of women's soccer, I feel like I can just be exactly who I am. And that's really, really cool because I don't feel like I've really been able to find that in other places and spaces. And so I just love it here. And then I think this other question of like, why like beyond the pitch? Like, why am I not wanting to have a podcast about like women's soccer analytics or something like that? A, because I have no authority to talk about any of that. So that's why, partially. And the other part of it is I just feel like this women's soccer, I don't want to call it a movement. I don't know. Just the existence of women's soccer in the way that it is right now is affecting so many of my friends' lives, my lives, in the way that these women just like are. One of the things that really hit home for me that I heard actually Glennon Doyle say, Abby Wambach's wife, she was talking to Tobin Heath and Kristen Press about like, again, what is it about women's soccer that feels so different and that those of us who haven't traditionally been sports fans have been brought in. And she said something about how we get to see these women being the full spectrum of what a human is. Like, not just a woman, of course, like the full spectrum of womanhood, but just like the full spectrum of humanity. They're passionate and they're strong and they're powerful and they're unapologetic about their competitiveness. And they're willing to state their goals out loud and chase after them, and also they're emotional and supportive of each other and happy and sad, right? Like it's the full everything. And they're allowed to be all of those things. And I think that a lot of us as women have felt like we can't be the full range of everything in other parts of our lives. And so I just think that that is a huge part of it. But then I think the women right now, this generation and the generation before of women soccer players have understood that like they represent more than just athletes, right? They're involved in initiatives, they're pushing culture forward. They're inspiring both the next generations and our current generations. They're involved in fashion and all of these things that I just think are so cool. Like they're actually becoming cultural icons, I think, in a way. And I just want to talk about those kinds of things. There are tons of women's soccer podcasts out there. And so it is a little bit intimidating to be coming on the scene from the little experience that I have. But the experience I do have is in being a fan and talking to my friends about what's going on off the pitch and all of the exciting things and the way that it's changed my life and making friends and all of these things. And so that's just what I want to bring here to this podcast. And so, yeah, I feel like that space hasn't been completely saturated in the women's game in terms of media coverage, which feels insane to say. I'm not at this point trying to claim that I am the media, which I don't know, maybe I am, and maybe I need to claim that so that I can be very aware of that. But I haven't even released an episode yet, so I'm just talking to myself right now. Hopefully, people are listening. But yeah, I think part of why women's soccer matters beyond the pitch is also why I started this podcast. I don't feel like we're necessarily seeing these bigger conversations about it. Like it gets dropped in every now and again in some of these other women's soccer podcasts, but not as an afterthought, but they're doing the soccer analytics and then they're like, oh, and also this is happening too. And I don't know, I talk about it all the time. And so I want this to feel like a very sort of friendly conversation about how women's soccer is impacting our lives and just call out some of these things because I don't know, I think it'll be fun. Hopefully you'll think it's fun too, entertaining, all the things. And so yeah, hopefully I'll have some people on here who can talk about things like fashion in a way that I'm happy to participate in the conversation. And I do think that women's soccer players have certainly influenced my personal fashion, but I know about fashion, I understand the concepts. And so hopefully people will be able to come here and talk to me about those kinds of things and just all of the other ways that women's soccer is impacting our lives off the pitch. So that's kind of how this podcast came to be. I've been thinking about doing it for a while just because I'm a big yapper. I'll talk all the time about this. I always joke with people when they're like, oh, what do you do outside of work? I'm like, well, my whole personality is being a women's soccer fan, full stop. And I think that's fun. I love it. I'm very, very passionate about it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got to where we are now. So I prepared a couple of like fun quickfire questions that I probably will be bad at answering because if you haven't noticed, I'm pretty long-winded. I'm gonna try to keep these quick. Favorite women's soccer moment that I've witnessed. This is gonna come up actually in my first episode with a guest. This is not a quick fire answer. Anyways, I don't live in a city that has a women's soccer team. So my access to seeing things in real life is limited. This is gonna be like, oh, a cliche answer, but I actually think favorite thing that I've witnessed in real life was it's got to be something from the Euros. I actually think my favorite thing that I've witnessed in real life is either the European final 2025. That was crazy seeing the fan reaction to Chloe Kelly making that penalty. That's really high on the list. And the other one that comes to mind is Anne Katrenberger's save against France. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It was insane. So, yeah, I think those two are my two favorite on the list. Okay, maybe I'll be better about a quick fire on this one. Player I'd love to grab coffee with. Wow, first person who came to mind was Naomi Girma, which obviously big US women's national team fan. So that's what we're going with. This is quick fire. Naomi Girma, I just find her so interesting and I just think that we'd have a good time. Honorable mention, Beth Mead. I really do in like a parasocial way, but like not in like a weird way. Do think that if Beth and I were ever in a room together, we would become like friends or we'd get along really well. I think the banter would be good. So yeah, Naomi Girma and or Beth Mead. Okay. Dream match I'd travel across the world to see. Well, apparently the Euros because I did. I traveled to Switzerland to see that. Dream match. I'm really hoping to get to Brazil for 2027 and my dream World Cup final is US Women's National Team versus England. So that's what it's going to be. If I could describe the women's soccer community in 3 words, what would they be? Home, that's the first word. Home, exciting, and oh, this is actually hard. Fun, exciting, and oh, I'm gonna say like friendship because I've made so many friends in the women's soccer community and I just love it so much. Okay, so that wraps up all of the questions that I had. I have one more question that just popped into my head. It's my favorite goal of all time. And because there's one, again, I said Abby Wambach was going to keep coming up. Hopefully, this doesn't become a theme forever for all the episodes, but it might. Favorite goal of all time is Abby Wambach 2011 header against Brazil in the like dying moments of extra time to bring it to a penalty shootout. Shout out Megan Rapinoe for that cross in and just Abby getting her big old head on it. So good. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It was insane. Okay, that's all for the quick fire. I just needed to add that in. So, sort of looking ahead, I just like I said, I want this to be a place where we just I don't know, have fun and talk about the cool things that are happening in the way that we are involved in them or the way they're impacting our lives or I don't know, we'll just kind of see where these conversations take us. And I hope like I said to keep inviting my friends on. I say keep inviting as though I've done anything yet. I do have plans already of guests who are have agreed to come on and just talk about different things with me. So I hope that these can be fun conversations that just feel like you and your best friends chatting because I'm going to be chatting with some of my best friends. And so, yeah, just bringing people into the women's soccer space and I don't know, just hopefully finding as much joy in it as I do. And so I'm just really, really excited. I can't wait to bring you into these conversations. I can't wait to see what this podcast becomes or maybe doesn't become. I'm also leaving space for me to record like a couple of episodes and then decide I don't want to do it anymore. But hopefully that's not what happens. I think I just have a lot of imposter syndrome. And like, I actually think it's a little bit valid here because I have no experience in like making a podcast and I really don't have any experience in women's soccer. So I just decided to show up and take up space. So we'll see how it goes, but all of my friends have been incredibly supportive so far. So hopefully other people outside of my immediate friendship group will also think that this is something worthwhile. Very excited. Thank you for listening, for tuning in. At this point, I actually have set up social medias for this podcast. If you're watching here on YouTube, would love if you would like subscribe, comment. That feels so weird to say, but like I would love those things. Let me know if you're listening, what you think about this. If you have ideas for future episodes, I would love that. I'm also on TikTok as Our Home Ground. And I think the username is like r.home.ground.p because I think it's like our home ground podcast. I should probably know that, but here we are on Instagram as our home ground pod. And then, yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, then here as our home ground podcast. Actually, I think it's just our home ground. I should know the answer to this, but here we are. It's just me. I'm winging it. It's our home ground on YouTube. So if you're listening on Spotify, that's where you can find us on YouTube. The video is there because I don't know. I like to watch people. I'm a big talk with my hands and make facial expressions kind of gal. So the idea of a podcast kind of makes me nervous, or like a non-video podcast makes me a little nervous that I'm going to be like making a face that shows that I'm being sarcastic. But if you're listening on audio, maybe you don't know that. Anyways, all of that to say, we'll see where this goes. Thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, follow, like, subscribe, comment on any of the socials. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know if you want to come on here and what you want to talk about. Because, like, maybe we can do that too. Anyways, thanks so much. I hope everybody has a great week.